Welcome to Newslaundry. I'm Alpana Kishore and I'm speaking to author Diana Eck, and she is the author of India, A Sacred Geography, also a professor of comparative religions and Indian studies at Harvard University. Welcome to Newslaundry.
Great to be here.
Thank you. What I'd like to start with is the concept of India, India's sacred unity as you describe it, which pre-exists the concept of India itself, or the state of India, the civilization of India. How does that work? I mean, in the sense of when you're talking about a sacred geography, are you saying that there is a unity that pre-exists the idea of India or the political geography of India?
It is an idea of India, the sacred geography, to be sure. But
what I mean to say, the nation state,
yes,
or even as a state that had emperors ruling over it or desiring it.
I mean, that's really the point, that the idea of a nation state with the kind of political unity that we imagine nation states to have today, and economic and all of the communications things that go into the making of a nation state, modern nation state, that's a relatively recent idea.
Yes.
So the question is, what of India was there before there was a nation of India, before there was a nation state of India? What kind of cultural belonging could describe what India is or what India was? And a lot of that has to do with the vast networks of pilgrimage that have brought Indians, Hindus of various kinds from one end of India to another, from Kerala to Badrinath, from Dwaraka to Puri. These are pilgrimage networks that are very old, that are significant, and that have created a kind of landscape of the imagination that is not imaginary, that is real, but that enables people to think about a sense of belonging that is much vaster than their own region.
There are a lot of people who would say that because India has such a vast geography of different cultures, different languages, different ethnicities and religions, it's really not a nation. Yet what you seem to be saying is that there is a core at the heart of all this difference that does unite, and that is the sacredness of these pilgrimages and the unifying sort of tendencies that they seem to have. So my question is, does one fit on top of the other?
So the diversity of India has always been there, has always been legendary in some sense. The many streams of culture and language and life that have taken place in this area. And yet, is it just an area? Is it just a piece of the map, basically, that is this sort of triangular peninsula that sticks out into the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea? No, I mean, there has been for a long time a sense that this is a cultural area that belongs together despite and perhaps because of all the difference. Did it matter that the chief ritual specialists of the Badrinath temple traditionally came from Kerala and spoke a different language than North Indians? Not really. I mean, this is part of what has brought this culture together, that there have been these sinews of mythology and geography and narrative and a sense of unity that doesn't have anything to do with uniformity, a unity that comes out of its diversity.
Right. Would you then say that Hinduism is a religion, or is it a culture? Is it a way of life? How do we define this religion then? It doesn't have the kind of definitive parameters that, say, the religions of the book do.
That's right.
So how do we define this? Is it just linked to India? Does it go beyond that? How would you define it?
Well, I think the definition issue is very difficult. I mean, it is a fabric as much as anything, and it has so much difference within it that there are many, many streams of Hindu life and thought: Vaishnava, Shakta, Shaiva, ascetic and householder, devotional and karma yogi and jnani. I mean, so many ways in which Hindus have lived their lives. But one of the ways in which Hindus have lived their lives is to go on pilgrimage from one place to another, and have begun to define what India is with their footsteps, in a way.
Okay.
And yes, it's a different way. Is it exclusive to India, this very locative sense of religiousness? Not exactly.
In the sense that Hinduism is India and India is Hinduism.
We know that Hinduism is of India, to be sure. But on the other hand, so is Islam, so is the Sikh tradition, so is the Buddhist and Jain and all of the Indic traditions. And they do go beyond India. I mean, in the United States, where there are Hindu temples built, it seems like every other month. There is a Hindu temple in Maryland, for example, that includes all the sacred geography of Tamil Nadu, Rameshwaram, and Tirupati, and the various shrines of Kartikeya. They're all there.
That's absolutely true. That is a phenomenon that comes with migration, and
it does.
We
take
talk
places
about that
with them.
Right, exactly. So that's relatively recent, but over thousands of years, when we are talking geography or sacred geography, what happens in the modern era, or say the 20th century or the 21st century, is that you tend to pigeonhole, you tend to become nation states that have exclusive ideas of who you are, why, what makes you, and then you tend to stick very closely to that definition. You narrow down the definition. So for instance, the Hindu right wing would then say that whoever is not of this land or this religion originally doesn't deserve to be here.
Well, I mean, and that's a kind of argument that comes really out of the margins of Indian society, because there is not that kind of, in the study of the sacred geography, that isn't the kind of consciousness that's there at all. I mean, Ganga, yes, is part of what the great river that flows through North India, but Ganga is also this river near our own town. Ganga is also in the temple tank in a city in South India. There are 7 Gangas. There are innumerable Gangas. There's a sense of the plenitude and plurality of the sacred. It's not confined. It's not limited. It's limited only by our human capacity to see, not by the capacity of the divine to be present.
So when you see present-day Hinduism, for instance, do you see the strand of the political right as it is in Islam or in Christianity in the United States or anywhere else?
There certainly is some of that present.
The strand of
sure.
that, no, but is that dominating? Is that overcoming the sacral and the traditional and the mystical, or whatever was beautiful and wonderful about the older religion and the way it was practiced? I
don't think so. I mean, I think there's been a kind of peak of extremist Hindu nationalism that probably is beginning to die out. I don't know. I'm a distant observer, so who can I say? But there also is a sense that what I describe as the sacred geography of India, it's something that doesn't belong to anyone in a way. I mean, I just come from the Kumbh Mela at Allahabad.
Yes.
And what is sacred about Kumbh? About why do people come there? It's not to visit this temple that has been constructed in this place or whatever. No, it's to come to that place where these rivers come together.
Right.
It's the rivers themselves that are seen as sacred. And so it is with so much of the landscape that I describe. And you go to the Jyotirlinga at Nasik, at Triambaka, or in Kedarnath. It's not just what's in the temple. It's a whole sense of the mountain, of the presence of Shiva in this place that is not confined in some, only in this temple kind of thing.
Right. Do you find this in today's world, again coming to modernity, that the sense of the material destroys or erodes this very spiritual connection to nature? When you describe it as a sacred geography, the tree, or the river, as you so eloquently put it recently, that there's plenitude, the sense of plenitude. It's not a narrow tradition. Everything is touched by God, or everything has a spiritual base. So do you find the material, the globalization of the 20th century, industrialization, huge, large migrations, affecting this basic sense? I mean, if you've traveled in India recently, which I'm sure you have, and looked at these sacred places again, do you find a difference in the way people practice that?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, there are 2 things that might be different. I think the material does erode some of the sense of the sacred, because a lot of these places of pilgrimage, the tirthas, are not really prepared for the number of people who come on tirthayatra, on pilgrimage. And so, you know, the latrines, the waste collection, the garbage collection, you begin to see some of the accumulation of a culture that is not really doesn't have the infrastructure to assimilate what's happening. And yet the numbers of pilgrims are greater all the time.
Is that because religiosity is, or showy religiosity is more important in this age?
I don't think it's showy religiosity, but I do think that the yearning for darshan of one of those places, whether it's Charon Dham of the Himalayas or whether it's Omkareshwar on the Narmada, to see the places, to visit them, is very, very strong still. But what's become different is the accessibility. That the bus companies, they're advertising your Charon Dham Yatra or your Kumbh Mela, and they're setting it up for you. And it's possible, and it's not so expensive, and you don't have to strike out on foot and fend for yourself. You can bring your family.
Right.
And so I think the way in which Tirtha Yatra has been organized is really very different. And also the publicity of it. I mean, people have now and did want to go. They responded to the Mahatmyas of the sacred places, but now they can do it in ways that they couldn't. So there are millions of people going on these yatras.
Right. Okay, how does religion overlap in India? When you look at India as a sacred geography, you're basically talking about it, the unity that comes from the pilgrimages that bring people together, unite them from far-flung places. But also India over at least 10, 15 centuries has seen the overlay and overlap of different religions coming in, you know, Islam particularly, but also Christianity, also the birth of new religions like Sikhism, and before that, Buddhism, Jainism. How do these religions overlap on this sacred geography?
Well, they do. I mean, really significantly. You know, the Devis of the northwest part of India are important to Sikhs and to Hindus alike, or the dargahs of many of the Muslim mystics and saints and martyrs.
What process
are visited
is that?
by. I think it's just the process of being together and recognizing. I mean, the Sufis were the great missionaries of India, and in a way, they were very much like cousins of the devotional bhaktas. So there is, I think, a natural process of coming together at some of these shrines, and they overlap one on the other. If you go to the Christian Marian shrine at Vailankani and in South India and Tamil Nadu, it's very much like the same ritual idiom of the Nageshwara Dargah not too far away, and of Tirupati, and that. I mean, you know, there's a kind of cultural similarity that is not makes it not the same, but but distinct.
Okay, but a lot of this is ascribed to the absorbing power of Hinduism. Because it's so fluid, because it's so vast, it has room for so many different traditions. So Islam or Buddhism, everything can just be absorbed and assimilated and given space and becomes part of the larger Hindu sort of stream or the Hindu flow. Which some people regard as threatening. You know, it's threatening to certainly to a smaller religion or maybe a minority, that this power is there, and before you know it, you're doing things exactly the same way. You know,
it's just the history of religions, really. I mean, it happens all over the world.
Do you have some examples?
It's not just the Hindu tradition, really.
Right.
I mean, you know, the things that I do as a Christian in the modern West in the United States of America are many of them rooted in pagan traditions of Europe. And that includes most of the seasonal traditions, most of what people do around Christmas time. All of that, it draws out of the subsoil of our own faith, of our own cultures.
Right.
I mean, it's not the same as what you're talking about here. I think the Hindu tradition has a kind of internal multiplicity that makes it Hindu traditions, and I would always put an S there, because it's not something simple. It's something complex, and nobody owns it or you know, is in a position to define what it is. And so if it enters into a kind of neighborly relation with streams of Islam, or begins to have some family relations with the Sikhs or Christians. This is just part of the dynamics of civilization.
Do you feel, especially in the Islamic world, just to give you an idea of something slightly, a debate going on in another realm, it's the debate between those who see a particular tradition of Islam that would say, see God in a flower, in a tree, again talking about the sacred geography, or else exactly as the Prophet laid down so many years ago, the Wahhabi concept.
Yeah.
Wahhabi concept
Sure.
is very strict and rigid, whereas this one, because it's rooted in the Indian tradition or even in the Indonesian or whatever tradition, wherever Islam went, that was not Arabic, it's rooted in local tradition. And so it changes shape and it takes form according to the culture of the place it's at. But now the debate is so strong over there. Do you have any thoughts on
The debate is strong within the tradition, to be sure. And that debate is historically part of Islam in India as well.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
between
Yes.
the sons of. Basically, it's a debate between the more orthodox and the more Sufi, you might say, between Dara Shikoh and Aurangzeb, and that.
So how do you
sort of
see that
thing.
going?
And it continues. It continues in. It's part of the liveliness of every religious tradition. You have it in the Hindu tradition between
Yes.
people who think this is something that can be contained and we know exactly what it is, and these are the 9 beliefs of the Hindu tradition. And every religious tradition spills out of the borders that are.
Do you think
set
the
for it.
right wing tries to make Hinduism a religion of the book in that sense? With rules?
Not
with,
exactly a book, but it is true that there are
like
things
Islam,
that they.
like Christianity, there's a book,
There are
there are rules,
some do, to be sure. But there are so many books, of course.
Okay,
But one of the things, let me just say that one of the things that's very interesting in the upcoming days of the Kumbh Mela is that this Ganga, Yamuna, Hindu, Muslim, Tehsil culture that is there in
Yes.
Prayag is really enacting itself in a way. There are lots of Muslim people who are part of the creation of Kumbh Nagar, and there also is plan on one of the big bathing days for Hindus and Muslims to bathe together in Ganga. Now, those are kind of gestures that say we're not confined to the banks of our own stream, and we need more and more of those gestures in society.
Yes. Okay, last question
one.
about your new book.
Yeah.
The one you're working on
Yes.
right now, which is the new sacred geography of modern America.
Yeah.
How does that come about? How did you start working on that?
Well, I started working on it about 20 years ago when it became clear that modern America included lots of South Asians who had come to seek their fortune in IT or to
Yes.
practice medicine or engineering of one sort or another. And they began to be my own students at Harvard College. And it was very clear that Hindu temples were being consecrated in cities all over the country, and Sikh gurdwaras and Islamic centers and Buddhist centers and Jain centers. So America has changed too. And the sacred geography of America now includes a lot of the streams of religiousness that have come from South Asia. To give an example, our Sri Lakshmi temple in the suburbs of Boston was consecrated about a decade and a half ago with waters of the Ganga mixed with waters of the Mississippi and the Missouri rivers and the American rivers. So,
And is
this
that,
is
is that
something
welcomed? Is that, that is welcomed?
it is welcome. To some people, they are astounded and don't know anything, but it does, it opens a new chapter in America's knowledge of the rest of the
Right.
world, because it's not just over there, it's right here across the street.
Diana Eck, thank
Okay,
you so
thank
much.
you.